Howdy folks, Jim Moore coming at you here on the Voice of Truth. This is Sundays. This is Monday, Tuesday, or Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Guys, I really enjoy this. I hope you do. You know, we try to shorten these down, get right to the point here. The story. This week we've been talking about the Samaritan woman, John's Gospel, chapter 4. I hope you enjoyed Monday and Wednesday. We're going to dive in a little deeper. So without doing a whole lot of recap here, I'm going to jump right into the story. Because Jesus, this encounter, man, remember Jesus, Jesus says, give me to drink. Will you give me to drink here? It's recorded. Jesus comes to her in his vulnerability, in his humility, in his tired and worn outness. And we miss this so much. And as the conversation continues, you know, without reading all these verses, I hope you're reading these verses and letting the Lord bring this to you fresh again and asking the questions and pondering and letting the story unfold in this encounter. But most of all, I hope as you read this, you are encountering Jesus. But Jesus tells the truth here in the story without shaming. Now, again, the conversation pivots when he tells her what he knows about her life. John 14, let me go back and let's read a couple verses here. Chapter 4, verse 17 and 18. I have no husband, she replied. Jesus said to her, you're right when you say you have no husband. The fact is you've had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. What you have just said is quite true. I'm going to tell you something, guys. As I go through these stories, I have tried to spiritualize all of these things, and maybe there are preachers out there that have done it. Maybe it all fits together. But I have backed off of that. You know, I'm trying to think, well, she had 5 husbands. These 5 husbands represent this, and this represents this. Guys, I want to be practical here, and I want you to understand that Jesus meets a woman, and she's of an ethnic group, a cultural, religious group that the Jews hated. Plus, she's a woman, and Jesus is going to reveal to her that he's the Messiah. All of these cultural biases and religious biases, he's crossing all of these boundaries, and he's just meeting a woman who is damaged and broken, and he's going to bring restoration and healing. Can it just be that simple? Can it just be that simple? Okay? I don't want to go into the stories. This means this, this means this. Jesus says what you have said is true. You had 5 husbands. The one you're with is not your husband. And it's these verses here, guys, that these preachers make the case that this woman, has been living in the sexual wantonness. You know, right here it is. She's been married 5 times. She's, you know the words they kind of use, because we always, when we have a very immature mind, when we think of dualism. And what I mean by that is, all we want to do when you have an immature mind is you want to categorize everything. Good, bad, up, down, us, them, inside, outside, right, wrong. And so we come at this woman here with this kind of simplistic, immature mindset, and we just think, well, she's been married a lot of times, man. She must be a whore, you know. Did you ever think maybe there are any number of reasons why she might have the past that she has? Maybe she was married off as a child. If you know anything about Jewish law, which the Samaritans at one time, they were all joined together. You would have to go back to find out where they came from. This was the split in Israel after Solomon died between Rehoboam and Jeroboam. The kingdom split into Judah and Israel. The Samaritans kind of fall into that group, but this Levitical law goes all the way back to Moses, that when a man marries a woman and if he dies and they don't have any children, his brother has to marry her to raise up children. And if he dies, then his brother, all the way into the seventh. So maybe under the Levitical law, maybe her husband died and she's been passed along these brothers here. We don't know. We really don't know. Maybe her various husbands abandoned her because maybe she's ill, maybe she's disabled, maybe she's infertile. This was a very tough thing back in those days if a woman couldn't have children. We see that with Abraham and Sarah and, several others here. Maybe she's a victim of abuse. Whatever the case, in first century Palestine, a woman didn't have any rights. She especially didn't have any legal power to end her marriage. No way, shape, or form she could do that. The authority to file for divorce rests with the man alone. He's the only one that could do it. No, she didn't have any rights. Didn't matter if he beat her. Didn't matter what the case. She's stuck. That's just the way it was. So there's a lot that we can't know about this woman's history. Okay? But what we can conclude is that she prefers to be invisible. For whatever reason, she doesn't expect the other women in town to accept her. Whatever reason. So she heads to the well here at noon in the scorching heat. Instead of the cool of the morning, they would all the way back to Jacob's well. They watered the sheep early in the morning. They watered their flocks early in the morning because it would just be too hot. They would find shade. She wanted to be alone. She didn't figure nobody would accept her. Nobody would like her. I think we've all felt this maybe at times, or maybe we've watched other people be accepted and we just don't fit in. Maybe we're outside. Remember this woman? She's an outsider. She hopes to come and go undetected, get her water, get out of there. And she's, carrying around in isolation whatever trauma, whatever wounds, whatever sin, whatever fear, whatever desperation her complicated history's left her with. She's carrying it around. She just didn't want to be bothered. She didn't want to talk about it, She's too damaged, too broken. But Jesus knows something because he says, I must go through Samaria. I think Jesus knew something. Remember how he encounters this woman, I thirst. Give me to drink. But see, the Jesus, he comes along and he sits on the well and he sees her and not only he sees her, he sees her. Like he did Matthew or the tax collector. He saw a man. He sees a man. Here Jesus sees a woman. He sees her. He really sees her. Not just, he sees her. He sees the whole of her. And when I say the whole of her, the past, the present, the potential, the future, who she has been, what she longs for, how she hurts, the pain she carries, and all she might become. And he names it all. But he names it without shaming her. I'm telling you, Jesus, oh man, we just think he, God up in the sky with a big bony finger. God is humble. Can name these things and bring them right to you with no condemnation whatsoever. That's amazing. Amazing grace. He names it without shaming her. He doesn't rebuke her. He doesn't condemn her. He sees and names the woman in a way that makes her feel not judged, but loved. Now, isn't that amazing? He doesn't make her feel exposed, vulnerable, but shielded. Don't we have that term, I am thy shield, thy exceeding great reward? He doesn't make her feel diminished, but restored. See, Jesus doesn't shy away from this painful, ugly, broken stuff in her life. Instead, He allows the truth of who she is to rise to the surface. It's important. It's important. No fig leaves here. No fig leaves. Let's name what's real, He tells her. Let's confess what is. No more games, no more smoke screens, no more posturing. I see who you are. I see the whole you, and I love you. Man, get a hold of that. We keep thinking we've got to do something to earn His love. Remember, He crosses those boundaries to rescue us because that's who He is. He is love. And Jesus is telling her, now I want you to see who I am. I'm the Messiah, the one in whom you can find freedom and love and healing and transformation. Spirit and truth, eternal life, living water. Drink of me and live. And just as He does for the Samaritan woman, Jesus invites us to see ourselves and each other through the eyes of love, not judgment, not separation, not condemnation, not all of that otherness. Kind of a question here, can we, like Jesus, become soft landing places for people who are all alone? Do you see the loneliness and hurt and the pain? They're carrying stories of humiliation too heavy to bear. Can we be those soft landing places? Can we see and name the world's brokenness without shaming it? Without blaming? See, Jesus endorses the woman's proclamation. When Jesus tells the Samaritan woman who He is, here's the first revelation I ever had. I told you Monday. She leaves her water pot at the well. And man, I remember that jumped off the page. She left her water pot. And it was a long time. What is this water pot? And I mean, truly, guys, this is a story of transformation. Because this water pot was the shape of her broken life. Well, I mean, what is water? It's the life. And her life was broken, and this is what she carried around, and her brokenness and her pain and the trauma that she's been in. And now that she's had this encounter with Jesus in His vulnerability and asked her for a drink, the excitement, the freedom, the liberty, she leaves that shape behind. She leaves that brokenness. She leaves that water pot behind. I'm telling you, when you encounter Jesus, you're going to leave some things behind. And now the well springs of life are starting to spring forth from her. This artesian well is beginning to bubble up in her and come forth and flow out of her bosom. Just as Jesus will say, later in John chapter 7, out of your bellies shall flow rivers of living water. And with that excitement, she leaves her water pot and she runs back to her city. And everybody knows, come see a man who told me everything I've ever done. He cannot be the Messiah, can he? That's how it is in chapter 4, verse 29. Come see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah? That's out of the NIV. Could this be Him? And I love that. She forgets her water pot. I love that her need to share her sacred experience overwhelms her desire to remain anonymous and invisible anymore. She's free. I love that her story, once the source of pain, once the source of secrecy, now becomes the evidence she uses to proclaim Jesus' identity. I love that she says, come and see. Recognizing that Jesus just can't be reduced to some secondhand summary. He must be experienced. That's why we do these. I want you to experience the risen Christ, the same as Paul did on the road to Damascus. The same as we all have. I hope you have. That's what this is all about. I love that she shares her experience of Jesus, even though her faith is just a newborn babe. Even her questions become part of her truth-telling. I mean, he cannot be the Messiah, can he? Is this the Messiah? Even her curiosity becomes a tool that arouses the curiosity of everybody in the city. And most of all here, I love that Jesus honors and blesses and validates the woman's proclamation. Because Jesus goes to her city. And he stays there for 2 days so that everyone who hears her testimony can meet him directly and see that the woman is a true witness, a reliable witness. And let me tell you something, guys. She, like John the Baptist, like the apostles, like Mary Magdalene, like Paul, hopefully like you, prepares the way of the Lord. Let me read a verse here. Verse 39. Many of the Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. He told me everything I ever did. And let me leave you with this as we close out for the week. In the most unlikely places, through the most unexpected voices, and from the minds and the bodies of the disempowered, the overlooked, the aliens, the strangers, God speaks. He speaks to us. And living water flows. May we have ears to hear, hearts to receive, and the courage to share what we've been given. I'll leave you with that, guys. Tune in next week and we'll see where the Lord takes us. So, anyway, Voice of Truth, thank you again for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Lord bless you all. Hey, Jim here. Thank you for clicking through to watch that video. If you're intrigued by the work that we're doing here at Rhythms of Grace Community Fellowship, these short sessions that we put on Voice of Truth, you can of course hit subscribe to keep up to date with all the content we're posting here on YouTube and on Podbean. And you can head to our website at www.rhythmsofgracecommunityfellowship.com. I know it's long, but there it is. You can find us on X, formerly Twitter. I'm on there as Little Jim Moore, and Facebook. We would love for you to join us, join in these conversations about how we can encourage each other in the way of Christ Jesus. Also, leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you in all the ways that you're journeying on this path towards Jesus. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.